We are here. July 8th, 2018, and a happy birthday it is to your one and only toughest man in the history of WWE Tough Enough, the Spartan Swinger, aka the Spartan Destroyer, Brian Danovich, Stacked Jack, and ready to attack right here on the Hannibal TV, coming to you to let everybody know tonight, midnight, Action VR Network. My voice is a little shot, but just like in Tough Enough, I played through the pain and I didn't quit. Torn pectoral, torn shoulder, torn bicep, and I showed everybody out in Lithuania as they were going insania. Out on the west in Cali, they found out I was the best. And right here on the East Coast, my paisans love me the most and always will, baby. But it's not about me, because it's all about an in-depth career retrospective on the one and only Death Dealer, on the one and only machine himself, Hannibal Devon Nicholson. We're going to cover everything from his amateur wrestling career like myself, his pro wrestling career, having his contract rescinded by the WWE, that no good, dirty, filthy, stinky, smelly, diseased Abdullah the Butcher, as well as Hannibal's new promising MMA career. I don't care what anybody says. Too aggressive, he was on top. He won that fight, and he will continue to win every other fight. So, tonight, after midnight, Action VR Network, okay? Tune in online, download the app. Brian Danovich's Wrestling with Passion podcast brings you a very special presentation, The Death Dealer, dealing in life, baby. And that is going to be one hell of an interview, because this is going to be also featured right here for Great North Wrestling and the Hannibal TV on YouTube. Part 1, don't you dare miss it, or the Death Dealer will deal you a fatal blow.
A segment brought to you by my show in the Action VR Network, The Death Dealer, Dealing in Life. And it is part 1 of a career retrospective interview with the Death Dealer himself, the Hannibal, the man you see on the Hannibal TV, Mr. Devon Nicholson. I have been a proverbial pain in the man's ass, a thorn in his side. He will tell you. My persistence pays off. Devon and I have a lot in common with our stories, and he's went through a lot, I've went through a lot, and he's doing a little bit better at overcoming the obstacles than I am, and I will fully admit it. But this isn't about me. This is about Devon Nicholson, the man who has lived a life that I think, besides documentary, could very well one day be movie-bound. He's now focusing on the world of mixed martial arts and kickboxing, and trying to go ahead and pursue that venture. You can see him almost daily with interviews on the Hannibal TV with some of your favorite legends in pro wrestling. And you could also see that he is the one of the promoters of Great North Wrestling up there in Canada. He will be taking on Max Testosterone in another match. The two of them will be facing off against each other in a kickboxing rules match. You saw them. Max Testosterone stepped up for Haku in the last Cage Wars. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I give you the man, the Death Dealer, the one and only ace reporter, Hannibal, Mr. Devon Nicholson. Devon, welcome to Wrestling with Passion, Paisan.
Well, it's very good to be here, and taking a short break from training for that big kickboxing match, August 26th, that's taking place in Hawkesbury, Ontario, which is an hour from both Ottawa and Montreal, so it's going to be a big match. 3 Great North Wrestling titles on the line that night. The 20-man battle royal is going to decide a new Canadian champion because Quebecer Pierre basically cheated in my match and then threw a fit after because he couldn't beat me. And he was stripped of the title for assaulting officials. And then there's going to be Nathan Banner against Wes Briscoe for the world television title, and Lady Yasmin against Jordan Grace for the Women's Championship of Canada. So, yeah, thehannibaltv.com. That's where you could go to my YouTube channel. All the information is on that website. And we put on interviews every single day. At least one interview. You brought it up. Definitely at least one interview every day. Sometimes many interviews a day.
Yeah, Devin, I noticed that you're making the big bucks, and you're going ahead and sharing them. The Patreon people, they get the exclusive of having the chance to see the whole interview first. You share the snippets and clips on the YouTube. Very generous of you. And then looks like you go ahead and finally, at the end of the day, you put the whole interviews up, and everybody gets to enjoy. I can't wait to see the interview with... Dr. D, don't call it fake, David Schultz. You really went ahead and had a good one there, Devin.
Yeah, and we've only revealed, 4 or 5 clips so far. And that was a 2-hour interview, over 2 hours. So that's a great one. For $1.99 a month for the people that complain about watching YouTube ads, you can see the shoot interviews right away. We put them on Patreon. So anyone that wants to help me actually produce more interviews, because I don't think people realize these people charge me for interviews. Plus I have to travel to do them. Plus I have to rent hotel rooms, camera equipment. And we're constantly trying to get better production values. People that have been following us all the way through have seen our production values increase. And yeah, if people want to support us, patreon.com/thehannibaltv, or just subscribe on YouTube, watch the clips, and maybe 3 or 4 months later, we're going to put the full shoot interviews up for everybody. Because these are historical perspective, and we don't want to hide them. We want them out there because one of the reasons I do this is so it's just not the WWE's version of history out there. That there's my dog's causing a bit of a scene beside me. But yeah, we want like a neutral...
Calm down, Piper.
Yeah. Oh, good. You recognize her name, yeah. She definitely has a personality of Roddy Piper. That's for sure. She was very well named for that. But yes, The Hannibal TV, it's actually the #1 pro wrestling YouTube channel in Canada by far. None come even close to us, and almost 44 million total views. That's not bad for a channel that's only been in existence 4 years. I created it with no video knowledge whatsoever, only a high school education, and I'm just a wrestler, and I've now become an interviewer, which is great.
That was very good that you went ahead into that detail about everything, and you said high school education. Devin, I said, we were going to go in better chronological order. This is our second try. I don't even have to tell the people we had a little bit of audio difficulty, like I said. But, I was a little all over the place, so this is going to be a better interview. We're going to go in chronological order. So you had all the great fans know about your wonderful interviewing on Hannibal TV, and you fans need to check that out. Devin does release a new clip every single day. I wake up, I get my notification, and it's right there. And one that's going good is the Disco Inferno's one, and there's a lot of others, so check that out. But Devin,
the Al Snow one was just released free, by the way. The Al Snow, that was a big hit one, too. Part 2.
Oh, the whole interview was released, Devin. I did not know that.
That just came out yesterday. The whole interview is now up free. So, yeah.
Oh. Now, did you ask Al Snow why he gives me the big hug and pats me on the cheek, and very nice when the camera's on, and then years later he's in TNA, and I go to inquire about working with him, and he doesn't call me back, Devin? I guess that didn't come up. All right. Just moving on here, Devin.
He only sent me one message when he was in charge of talent relations in TNA, so we're all in the same boat. TNA seems to like to just hire the same people over and over again, no matter what the regime, and they get pretty much the same results. So I don't really have any interest in talking about them because I don't watch them. But best of luck to them because we need other products out there.
We do, Devin. Devin, are you saying that we aren't going to get to talk about, we're going to get to it, we're not going to get to talk about your exploits with TNA and the wonderful invasion and you going ahead and putting that, we're not going to get to talk about that?
It's up to you. You got an hour, and we've already gone 10 minutes, so I don't know if we're going to reach that or not. There's much more important things. I've wrestled Kevin Nash, Honky Tonk Man, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, James Storm, Abyss, Abdullah the Butcher, Terry Funk, Eugene, Heidenreich. The list goes on.
Dan Severn, don't forget Dan Severn.
Yes. I don't even remember half the people I've wrestled. Ricky Banderas, but I've wrestled a long list of stars, and that's more important than my exploits with TNA. I think that's what people care about more.
Devin, a lot of
Lanny Poffo too. Sorry to interrupt, but Lanny Poffo, who could forget that?
We got to get to that. That's going to be good. Devin, let's start the damn interview. I apologize for going tiptoeing through the tools. Devin, let's start it out. You said high school education. For instance, Devin Nicholson in the province of Canada was an amateur wrestling champion. Now, Devin, as we go ahead and ease into your amateur career, see, similar to me, you had the fascination with professional wrestling and wanted to be a pro wrestler. You felt, as did I, that getting involved into amateur wrestling would go ahead and help you along the lines of pro wrestling. So before we get into that endeavor, what was it that attracted you and hooked you to professional wrestling and made you know that that was going to be where you focused all your attention to and wanted to go ahead and have a career in this wonderful sport?
Well, there was my mother was pretty much a stay-at-home mom, and she was as she was looking after me when I was young, as I was just learning how to talk and everything, she was looking after a kid that was probably 4 or 5 years older than me, and he happened to be obsessed with wrestling, so he kind of only talked to me about wrestling from the time I was able to talk. So I kind of one of my closest friends when I was a kid loved wrestling, and everyone also loved wrestling in the 80s. All kids did. It was considered mainstream and kind of cool and acceptable. Like, I'd be embarrassed to say I was a wrestling fan now, but like in the 80s, and I'm not, by the way, I'm not a wrestling fan any longer, but I am still a fan of the 1980s wrestling. That was great. But it was basically popular, and I started putting on events in my backyard by the time I was 5 or 6 years old. By the time I was in grade 9, there was up to 80 people sometimes attending these events, and then my parents finally said, these are getting too big and like too boisterous, so I was cut off from that, so I had no choice. I had to get my fix of wrestling, so I had to do it through amateur wrestling.
Yeah. Folks, what Devin is speaking of is a lot of us in the 90s, what we did, you hear it referred to as backyard wrestling. Well, what we did was we went ahead, and Devin, I saw the tapes, and I saw you hitting somebody with a chair. What we did was we went ahead, and all of our friends in the neighborhood, we got them all together. We went ahead and came up with a promotion name. We would do these events where we would actually have crowds. But Devin, I think you'd have them pay 25 and 50 cents a piece to go ahead and watch these events.
There was like a hill in my backyard, so if you were on the bottom of the hill, it was 50 cents, and if you were on the hill, that was like the stands, that was 25 cents. So yeah, they were pretty well organized, actually. I put up posters.
Yeah, even then, Devin, you were a great promoter.
We had security.
Shows and Devin, you were also the champion then too. You were the top talent back then. What was?
I don't know if I was actually. I don't think we even had a title. And I played numerous roles. I had 3 or 4 masked personalities. I would come out in maybe 3 or 4 matches throughout the course of a 9-match card. playing different characters each time. So it was actually a good experience. It was very similar also to how pro wrestling ended up working ultimately, the way I was putting on shows back then before the internet and before even, I'm sure you were in the same case, before Mick Foley's videos came out that he did backyard wrestling, then suddenly, but his was like hardcore stunts. Mine was wrestling, but it was also the show business element to it, and profit. I would make $20 maybe when it was all combined in ticket sales. So the higher paid wrestler, or the more popular kid wrestlers, even got paid. Some of them got $5, some of them got $10. So, which is actually more than I made pro wrestling sometimes.
Oh, yeah, that's incredible. You were paying the top dollar. But Devon, I love this because it's just so incredible, the similarities to this story. But Devon, I want you to go ahead and explore into more detail these characters that you portrayed. You said 4 of them. Some were masked. I noticed one of them, you had the long hair, the jeans. What were these characters you portrayed, and how did you go ahead and come up with them? Was it because we had talked previously, you were a big fan of the larger-than-life personas, the Road Warriors, the Ric Flair, the Macho Man Randy Savage, Ultimate Warrior. What was it that went ahead and had you draw inspiration for these characters you created?
Well, I think most of the masked ones were bad characters, and as the promoter and like the nice kid on the street, my character without the mask was the babyface popular character, and then the heels wore the masks, so people wouldn't necessarily recognize me. And I wouldn't admit it to people too, and I'd get very mad if some of the other wrestlers would tell other neighborhood kids that it was me, because I would try and use different accents when I talked under the mask. I took it very seriously, but I'm sure the people don't care all that much about 1996 backyard wrestling.
Well, Devon, it's the start of the story. It goes ahead and shows that you came full circle. You had a dream, you had a vision, you went ahead, and then you wound up becoming a promoter. We're going to get to everything. We might do 3 parts to this interview. I told you, this whole retrospective, everything's going to be told from stuff. I'm going to find out what you eat for breakfast, too, if I know. But in all seriousness, we talked about, okay, so you went ahead and you talked about what you were doing in your backyard wrestling, and you said that went ahead and evolved into an amateur career where you pretty much had to go ahead and get your fix, you said, by going into amateur wrestling, and you wound up going ahead becoming a champion in that. So how did it take place? How did you go ahead and move on to amateur wrestling and go ahead and have that be the start of what would lead to your pro wrestling career?
Well, as I said, the backyard shows were getting too big. My parents banned me from doing that. And at the same time, it was my first year of high school, and I wanted to always be a pro wrestler, so naturally I was always told and read that it was important to know the wrestling holds, so you had to get an amateur wrestling background. So I got into amateur wrestling. I ended up becoming a state champion, Canadian champion while I was still in high school, was on the national team. And then in later years, further down the road, well, actually, after high school, I was offered scholarships to pursue amateur wrestling at both the University at Buffalo in New York and Simon Fraser University in British Columbia, which is like the top wrestling university in Canada. But at that time, I just wanted to be a pro wrestler, and I had no interest in taking amateur any further, which was a really dumb move because I had great accomplishments for my age, but I also believe my parents gave me very poor guidance and basically just encouraged me to follow my dream. But in reality, if I just continued on with amateur wrestling, now I know it wasn't publicized heavily that time, but WWE scouts amateur wrestling tournaments, especially in NCAA. So if I had just continued on in amateur wrestling, I probably would have become a pro wrestler in the high levels early on through amateur wrestling, rather than taking the extremely long route, and then ultimately something bad happened while I was on that long route that prevented me from doing the contract when I finally received the contract.
Yeah, Devin, I have to tell you, because we don't have crystal balls. We don't know. Okay, look, and I know you spoke to your parental figures. They got very upset with you for turning down those scholarships. And the fact of the matter is, Devin, I had been offered a modeling contract. A very handsome young man I was, but I thought, now we know that there are other things that we go ahead and do can lead you to WWE or pro wrestling. At the time, we thought we just had to stay on that narrow path of, focus on wrestling and nothing else.
Because in the 80s, that was right. You could have done that in the 1980s.
Well, yes. So the fact of the matter... Yeah, so the fact of the matter is, you go ahead now. Before we wrap up the amateur wrestling, I want to hear about how this is fascinating to me. You wound up being the only participant on the team that represented the entire program in the school. I find that just so remarkable.
Yeah, well, what happened was I had won state, the equivalent of states, my sophomore year, and then there was no wrestling team my senior year because the coach moved to a different school and nobody wanted to coach the team. So they made an agreement where I could train at my club and at a different school, and the high school principal would accompany me to the tournaments because they knew I was going to win the equivalent of states again, and they weren't going to deny me that. So it was kind of cool. My last year of high school was pretty cool. I was treated very well by everyone because I was such a good athlete at that time. And as I said, I really wish I had pursued it. And then for amateur wrestling, I went on to pro, stopped wrestling for 10 years. And then at one of my low points later on in life, I decided that I was depressed and I needed something to get my mind focused on positivity. So I went back into amateur wrestling 10 years after my last match and ended up medaling in numerous university level tournaments. And my biggest accomplishment in that comeback was I was the alternate for the London Games for Canada, as I got silver at the Olympic qualifications trials that year, and that was me wrestling as an independent. I didn't even have a team. The coach I had was just a random coach. So imagine if I had actually been practicing with a team, high caliber opponents, had a whole coaching staff working with me the whole year. But I that was one of my biggest accomplishments in life, was 10 years after being national champion, coming back and being the alternate in Greco-Roman wrestling. And I did that with a torn meniscus in my knee, because before that tournament, I was doing warm-up tournaments to prepare, and I was escaping a single leg and actually tore my meniscus. But I've been training so hard, I wasn't going to not show up at the trials, so I fought through it and got a silver medal, which was pretty good.
No, it's damn good. It's very impressive. And, I'm dealing with a torn meniscus right now, trying to go ahead and insurance is denying me. And, Devin, it's very painful, okay? So the fact that you went ahead and you went through that, you guys just don't understand. He makes such a good point. He was the only person going through it, and his coach was a random coach, as he said. It's very hard when you're the heavyweight, as I experience. Sometimes you don't have proper training partners to go ahead and work out with, and you're not getting the training like a lot of the other weight classes are. And that's what you were speaking of, is you pretty much were a one-man show.
I trained at TriStar MMA actually for that tournament, because in my town, my city, Ottawa is not a big amateur wrestling town. So I had to commute 2 hours to Montreal, where I would amateur wrestle with MMA fighters that were training at TriStar, and they also have an amateur wrestling program there, just to have the bodies, because you can't fight 190-pound guys in practice and then go in there against 265-pound guys. There's just no way to duplicate that.
People just don't understand. It just doesn't give you the proper practice. But Devon, I want to go ahead and back up. Okay, you know what? I don't want to go diagonal, left forward and right. You know what? If we're on the subject of this, Devon, you went friggin' bonkers. You took the Kurt Angle book, you slam it down, you go ahead and go haywire, you challenge the man, you say that the man is pathetic. I just watched it, Devon. You know, you go ahead and say that the intensity, integrity, you basically shit on the title. You said it was your Bible, that you read it cover to cover, it would motivate you, and then you were completely turned off by the man backing out of the Olympic trials and competition and training, because you felt you had been sticking up for Mr. Angle, and you had been going ahead and saying that people, no, Kurt is taking it seriously, he's going to go ahead and compete, and he's going to go ahead and kick ass. Devon, you said you felt like you looked like an idiot by defending the man, going ahead and praising him and being a loyal supporter, and then you felt you were left out in the cold. You felt like Kurt Angle let you down as well as everybody else down. Where does this anger and hostility come from, and the frustration you must have had? Go ahead and speak about that situation while we're on the subject.
Well, that was around that time, 2012, and I'm over that now. But that whole situation was Kurt Angle was making a big deal that he was going to do the American Olympic trials for the London Games for years, saying that. And as I said, I did the Canadian Olympic trials, so everyone knew I was a pro wrestler, so including Olympic wrestling people. And everyone was always telling me that, oh, he's not taking it seriously, this is just a publicity stunt, he's not actually going to do the Olympic trials. But I had read his book, and I had been a fan of Kurt Angle, and I still am. But I was just really kind of disappointed at the time, because he pulled out of the Olympic trials that year because he had some minor knee injury that supposedly didn't even require surgery. Whereas when he did the Olympics, he won them with a broken neck. So my only thing was, if you're going to do them, just pull out and say, listen, I'm not the same athlete. I really wanted to, but it didn't work out. I don't know. I guess I was just mad because I actually thought he was going to at least try and show up and do the trials, and he didn't. And I had been in arguments trying to convince people that he was serious, but it ended up, it was all basically a work or something. So that's what I was upset over. So I made a video that initially got tons of hits, and I legitimately did challenge him to an amateur wrestling match because I wanted.
You did?
That was the whole point of that video, because at that time I had won the alternate for the Canadian team, and he had backed out of the Olympic trials for the U.S. team, which was after the Canada Olympic trials, I guess. So I was just making a challenge to him because I was upset at him, and what it got me a lot
Devon, yeah, and to also finish...
But just for the record, I don't care anymore about that. I would have loved to have wrestled him, and that was 6 or 7 years ago now. I'd still love to wrestle him, but I understand. I don't know if he was serious or not, but basically, I don't think he could have done them. He wasn't training, preparing like he was before. I don't think it was the injury. It was just that he couldn't do it anymore. So whatever. I'm older now.
Well, no, that's what I'm here. I want to finish up this. Devon, you were also mad the fact that he was going ahead and pro wrestling, and you know.
Yeah, he still pro wrestled that whole time.
There you go.
So you just watch this, so it's fresh in your mind. So the whole time he was claiming he couldn't amateur wrestle, he was having pro Yeah, that's what made. I was mad about it too because it made pro wrestlers basically look like wimps, which I can't really defend anymore because a lot of them are. But no, but at that time I still was very protective of pro wrestling, and like, how can you say you're too injured to do amateur wrestling, but you're wrestling in the main events of TNA? And a lot of people like, yeah. Anyways, I had practically forgotten about this, but I guess the video's fresh in your mind. But yes, I was upset over that too because pro wrestlers are supposed to be the toughest people in the world, but he can still pro wrestle, but he's too injured to amateur wrestle, which doesn't involve chairs, punching, kicking, fighting monsters. No. So, whatever.
Night after night on the road.
Obviously, it wasn't that great for TNA's business ultimately because it's no longer the same owners and they lost a lot of money since then.
No.
So that didn't help TNA's business. I'm not saying that was the only thing, but I don't think that was good for the wrestling business, that whole debacle. And yeah, I'd still love to amateur wrestle him any day, though. It would be a lot of fun and it would be a pleasure. But I was legitimately upset at that point in time.
Yeah, that's one of the things I admire about these videos and things you go ahead and film. The show's called Wrestling with Passion, just the passion that you go ahead and portray, and the saliva coming from your mouth and the anger, the intensity. You said, do you even know what intensity, integrity, do you even possess any of those characteristics anymore, Angle? So, all right, we'll put that chapter to bed. Devin, I'm very well prepared. I've done my research, so we have to go ahead and touch on each one of these topics. It's like a smorgasbord of Hannibal. Now, Devin, we have to go ahead and back up. Let's take it back to your early training. I know Jacques Rougeau was not your only trainer. We're going to get to the whole Mat Rat situation, which for the people that are following this interview, Mat Rats was a television pilot brainchild of Eric Bischoff, the exploits of some young Canadian professional wrestlers that were of adolescent in the teenage years, and it would follow them in their early on in professional wrestling, and they were trying to have the high flying and different things, and they were trying to be very unique with
dancers
their presentation.
The crowd was all
yes,
dancing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Eric Bischoff and Jason Hervey, this is right after WCW closes up shop. Eric Bischoff had made the comment that he was linked to some of the older professional wrestlers, like, the Hogans, the Savages. Well, now he said, I'm going to go in the opposite direction. Am I correct, Devin? And he said, well, now I'm just going to go ahead and go with the youngest professional wrestlers that are out there.
That is a quote. He gave that in his speech to all of us. Harry could tell you that. Ted, TJ was a witness, Natty.
Yeah, of course, you're speaking of the Hart family. TJ is Devin, who is TJ, who is Natty, who is...
Actually, Rene Dupree was there, too. Rene Dupree was there, and Rick, Victor, whatever his name is. He was also in Mat Rats. So there ended up being a lot... Oh no, Jinder Mahal wasn't. He was around at that time, though. But there was like 7 or 8 people that were involved in Mat Rats that are all doing pretty well in the wrestling business now. So it was actually a good group of wrestlers, to be honest.
A very good group of wrestlers. You guys, were...
Jack Evans, too. Sorry, Jack Evans was also in there.
No, it's fine. Yeah, Jack Evans, who's killing it in Mexico. Teddy, come on, Devin. Let's talk about Teddy Hart. And that's going to lead us into... Teddy Hart was one of your original trainers with TJ, and I want to talk about Let's just go right to Devin Nicholson going ahead and getting involved in the training to be a pro wrestler. He's gone ahead, wrapped up his amateur career, and Devin wants to say, hey, I got to give this a shot. Take me to the early onset of training to become a pro. Who were your trainers, and what was the training and conditioning like for you, buddy?
Well, no, it was pretty unusual because I didn't initially. It was kind of a long process. Right after high school, I did the Mat Rats thing, and they were looking for the best high school athlete. They had like a casting where you had to send in tapes, and I sent in like a bunch of my amateur wrestling matches, and I was the national champion at that time, so they jumped on me and they flew me out to do the pilot in Calgary at that time, and that basically they trained me. They were supposed to train me for 2 weeks to just prepare me for the match that I was going to have on that pilot. It was very disorganized. Oh, Mauro Ranello was also the commentator for Mat Rats, by the way, and Cyrus and Joey Styles were also involved, just to give you some of the people that were involved in that.
Don Callis was involved in the 7.
He was also involved.
I didn't know that.
Mauro Ranello called my first match. He called my Mat Rats match. But yeah, no, it was a terrible match because they barely trained us, and we had it, but they... Basically, Eric Bischoff, this was recorded in like June or early July, and WCW closed in March. So Bischoff was like giving us speeches, telling us how this was going to be the next MTV, big hit, blah, blah, blah. So that's when I ended up turning down my scholarships, and Ted suggested that, okay, you better move down to Calgary here and start training. Because it looks like Mat Rats is going to pick up. But by that time, I'd only been amateur wrestling. So I moved out to Calgary, which is the equivalent. I live near Syracuse. Calgary's near Montana. If you're in the States, listen to this. So I drove like across the country. I only had about 3 months saved up. Had very little training. Nothing ended up coming out of Mat Rats there, and I basically ran out of money, so I had to go back home, save money, and the closest wrestling school to my home at that time was Jacques Rougeau's school in Montreal, where I was commuting, where I started commuting because I still obviously wanted to be a wrestler, and Jacques was a unique trainer. He focused more on the entertainment aspect of it, but we always got along well.
Devin, he taught you how to sing, you said.
He definitely did, yes. Yeah, it was. He was always entertaining, but the thing is, his events, he gets big crowds for his events. From 4 to actually this August, he's putting one in front of 14,000 fans. But the issue is, he only has anywhere from 1 to 4 events a year. And all you do at the practices is practice the match that you're going to have on the next show. So you're not really learning anything. And he had actually had me convinced, like, you're learning how to bump, okay? You're learning how to bump. You're learning the mechanics. But you're not actually learning how to call a match on the fly. And I was actually convinced that I was pretty good. And then I went back to Calgary to visit a girl that I knew that I had been dating. And while I was back in Calgary, I had arranged through Harry, I think, or TJ, to get me a Stampede wrestling match. So they gave me a 20-minute draw match. And this would have been like my 3rd or 4th match, but because I'd only been practicing the match over and over again with Jacques, and I'd only had the 2 weeks training for Mat Rats, to get thrown in there for 20 minutes against a veteran. I just got my butt literally kicked for 20 minutes. The stiff Stampede style of wrestling, I didn't know anything. And it was at that point that I realized, okay, I'm not in the right place to learn how to wrestle. I've been thinking I was, but I got to move back here. And within 2 months, I moved back to Calgary. But this time, I didn't screw around. I joined the dungeon that Bruce Hart was running at this time, and that's when I finally got trained on how to wrestle, learn how to actually wrestle and put on a great match.
psychology as well. Stu, who was in deteriorating health, he was sitting in his wheelchair on the outside, and occasionally he would go ahead and put a hold on you. And
actually, he never put a hold on me. I've seen him put holds on other people, but you'd have to really let him put you in the hold, but he never put a hold on me. But he wasn't
able to take it like he used to.
No, this was from 2002 to 2005, and I believe he passed away I was at his funeral towards the end. I forget if he passed away before or after I went to Puerto Rico for the first time, but
it was 2005.
Yeah, 2005. Okay, yeah. So, when he passed away, that was pretty much it for Stampede Wrestling. I never continued training after that because they had to sell the house and the dungeon was gone. But no, Stu was always around. He wasn't going down in the dungeon much in those days because he was often in a wheelchair. Outside, they would push the wheelchair if we were training outside. But I was actually...
Devin, they had a ring outside right in the backyard, didn't they?
If it was set up, that was the same ring that the shows were done, and it's very cold in Calgary. The weather's bad, so most of the time the practices were in the dungeon. But if it was a nice day when they brought the ring back, and we'd have on Saturdays and Sundays we'd have noon practices. If it was sunny out, they would have us take out the ring if it was there, and actually when I was there they were running pretty regularly, so they were using the ring every week because we were running about 6 shows a month. There was 4 shows in Calgary a month. Would rotate a different place on every Friday at a different end of the city, and then there was about 2 spot shows a month. So we weren't getting paid much, and the crowds were bad. We were getting paid anywhere from $5 to $50 to nothing. Sometimes. One memory I have of one of the worst days of Stampede Wrestling, there was a crowd of about 30 people, and TJ was paid in a handful of quarters, and he threw the quarters against the wall, and he's like, "If you can't pay me, just don't pay me." But this is... Those were some of the worst days in the history of Stampede Wrestling. Around that time, they were running some really bad buildings, but we learned. And TJ was and Harry, for instance, and Ted, they'd all been training all their lives, so they were already great. But there was others of us that learned. One of the other guys that was training there at that time, you mentioned Defy Wrestling to me off the air, as a guy that wrestles for Defy, Randy Myers. He was also there with us. But yeah, no, there was... it was fun. Looking back on it, it was fun. And the training was good. I have no regrets of that. That's the best training you can have, was the dungeon training. I have no regrets about that training.
Yeah, it's sad, man. You go ahead. Nobody's broken in like that. Nobody goes ahead and gets that type of education today. And let's go ahead and move forward.
Well, what people don't realize, too, about the dungeon, one last thing, is you're learning how to bump on mats on the floor. So one thing I have never been really that injured in wrestling, other than bumps and bruises and cuts and scrapes. And I think one of the reasons why is because you had to learn how to bump properly on that floor, or you just wouldn't last, because you'd break your back or you'd leave, you'd stop coming. But if you actually learned how to bump and not get hurt on that dungeon floor, you could bump on anything. So, and I've bumped on concrete floors. So I definitely believe I was trained properly on how to bump. And you look at some of the crazy bumps that Ted's taken, and TJ over the years, and Harry. And Natty's as tough as they can.
Yeah, it's just insane, that whole hard... Calgary family, just very tough people, just crazy stories of, you hear Stu going ahead and making the flapjacks and using the same spatula to go ahead and take the cat feces and go ahead and move that from one area to the other and then flip the
but I never actually saw that, and I believe a lot of that is just wrestlers exaggerate stuff and they like to pick on.
Yeah, but Devin, it's funny.
Yeah.
The same spatula that he's making projects with. All right, Devin, let's move on.
But for the record, that's a false story. People just lie. He had another spatula. He had a spatula for cat litter because they had lots of cats, and he used a spatula for that. There was a separate spatula that he used that was in the kitchen, but people just made the joke, and it's been made so much that people believe it's real.
Ole Anderson, I remember saying it. So, yeah, I could see Ole going ahead and
Ole was ever in
exaggerating.
Calgary. I never heard of Ole Anderson.
No, he was there. He was there. He said that if you had $5,000, you could buy the whole town. All right, Devin.
I'm not denying it. I just never heard of Ole Anderson. He certainly didn't make a name for himself there if he was there, because I never heard of him wrestling there.
Oh, Devin, oof. This is getting good.
No, I'm an expert on Stampede Wrestling. I've read all the history books on Stampede Wrestling, and I don't recall anything on Ole. But
Yeah, he was only there briefly through, Vern and Stu were tight, and he had sent him up there and get some experience. And Ole said he just wasn't making the money, and he just couldn't go ahead. He said it was like Superstar Billy Graham. It was just too damn cold. So,
it's cold. Imagine the coldest New York winter, but 10 times worse. The cold just hits you like a slap in the face, and the snow plow systems are also terrible there. So the roads are awful to drive on, and the winters can last from October to May.
Yeah, that's so crazy, Devin. Just a sidetrack. Think about the traveling. Okay, because those guys went ahead and they were all over the place. You've done your research, and they said they would load up that van now. Honky Tonk Man even talks about how they, in your interview, they had just a whole dashboard full of joints. And, they would go ahead and do those trips and be in the vans. And, the bad weather. And, you even hear the story of how Adrian Adonis and those gentlemen died recently, 4th of July, due to the hideous travel conditions. So it was just so rough. Everything that everyone endured in that territory, it really prepared you for the big time and just made you really tough between the training and the travel and just overall life.
There's a lot of you were definitely ribbed badly. Even I was ribbed when I first started. I won't get into it, but it was.
No, Devin, come on, please. What ribs? Come on, Devin.
But they would get on you always in that territory. So not only that, the ribs, the bullying inside the ring, because it was really tough. I'm not saying necessarily bullying, but you'd have to fight if you were in there probably against a Bad News Allen or a Dave Schultz. If you wanted to get something, you had to fight for it probably. And then you're driving 6 hours in a snowstorm to the next town in a car full of wrestlers burping and farting, and half of them are drunk, half of them are trying to spike your drink. So it's...
Devin, wait, no, you just hit the nail on the head with something. You said about Bad News, and I remember Benoit talking, I know it's taboo to bring it up, but I went ahead and got to work with him in HWA, and I got to work with him in Deep South. Benoit, I believe he got this from Bad News, as you were saying, if you wanted something in a match, Devin, you had to work for it. It wasn't just like, oh, here's a spot you're going to go do. You had to go ahead and take it, okay? They would make you work for it. Go ahead and speak about that as far as if you wanted to go ahead and do something in there, you had to go ahead and go toe-to-toe and take, whatever you thought you were capable of doing.
That was exactly it, and I didn't even know that in my, looking back on it, I didn't even know I was being taken advantage of when I first started with some of the characters in that territory. And because when you first start, you don't know what getting stiffed is. You don't know what dangerous is if someone's doing. So I remember someone threw me into the corner and ran at me full force, booted me as hard as I could in the solar plexus. Looking back on it now, I know that the person was taking advantage of me, but back then I didn't know any better. But I definitely, maybe I thought I just wasn't good enough to know how to take it properly. But you, especially with the veterans who had gone through the abuse themselves, when it came their turn to crawl up the ladder, they're not just going to let some new person to take their spot. And I was the same way. I definitely dished it out on people as well. That came after me, although there wasn't that many that came after me, because I was in pretty much the last dungeon class, and then Stampede pretty much folded in 2005. I was there 2002 to 2005 when Stu passed away. So I actually promoted the last biggest Stampede wrestling event. Was the first time I ever wrestled Abdullah. And it was Harry's farewell match to WWE. He had it against TJ, and that was supposed to be his last match before going to WWE, which it was. He ended up not staying with WWE, but those were the two matches on the card. Lance Storm was also appeared on the card, and we had about 500 for that, but in those days that was a good crowd because we were drawing 150 was a good crowd. So that was one of the first bigger events that I promoted. And Stampede, just to talk about me as a promoter, I got my start promoting spot shows for Stampede Wrestling because I noticed that some of them were not getting good crowds, and I noticed that I didn't seem like some of the towns were being posted properly, so I started asking how I could help, and eventually they said, well, you can pay to put on a show and we'll work out a percentage deal. So that's how I started doing some of the spot shows, and they Ross Hart in particular taught me the promotion side of things.
Yeah, that's great, Devin, because I know you did the same shit I did, where you got to go ahead, and for me, I would go ahead and put a nice, we call it business cash. I would wear a nice button-down shirt, pair of slacks. Devin, you go into the businesses and you bring the flyers and you ask, hey, can I go ahead and put this in the window? And my wrestling promotion is having a show and we'd like to promote it. And I'm sure that's exactly what you did.
I still do that. I still do that for Great North Wrestling. Yeah. I've never stopped.
There's nothing wrong with that.
The only thing is now sometimes people freak out when they see me come in the store because they know who I am. Oh.
Yeah, they're afraid. This big.
No, I mean some of them are excited to see me, and which makes it easy.
Yeah, you are a celebrity over there, Devin. I mean, you all the things you do between the television, the acting, the MMA. I mean, it's like you got the Bret Hart treatment. You're Canada's #1 son. Devin, we're wrapping up the early onset training, and this is just so fascinating, man. I could talk to you for days, years, months. It's just because Devin, this is one of the reasons I wanted to do this interview. This is it, man. Paisan, do you understand that we're the last? There's not going to be anybody to go through the stuff that we went through. The training, the training in the gym, the training in these dungeons like you speak of, and going ahead and getting that training like I started out, where you didn't have a ring, you had mats, and they wanted you to go ahead and you had to go through blow-up drills and things to see your physical toughness, to see how much heart did you have to want to be a wrestler, and were you going to stick around, right? And were you going to show up for them to go ahead and put more torment on you? So this is it, man. Our stories are the ones that everybody goes ahead. They get their Hulk says they get their boots from Santa Claus. They go to a wrestling school, and then that's it. And it's just they go to the hotel and they play video games. So it's a completely different business. Now let's go ahead and move forward to Devin. Goes ahead, he's doing these different characters, like in Nyrat's, he had a few different names. One of them was Luke something.
Oh, just one more
What was the
thing. They
name?
either play video games or they sleep as long as possible to make the
Oh,
time
like
go
Kevin
by
Owens,
fast.
Devin. Go ahead, Devin. Come on. I know you want to get it out. Tell it. Kevin Owens.
No, I'm just
what did
referring
he do?
to the. I like Steve Austin. I was lucky enough to speak to him back in January, but I heard the Steve Austin podcast with Kevin Owens. When he asked him what he does to pass the time on the road, he said, "I try and sleep as much as possible to make the time go by faster," which just boggles the mind. Most people would be training in the gym to prepare for the match, or seeing the sights of all the towns you're in, or doing something other than sleeping as much as possible, but to each their own. I just found that funny.
Yeah, Devin.
Like, if you read any of these old books or these biographies of these wrestlers like David Schultz, I couldn't imagine David Schultz writing something like, "I try to sleep as much as possible." Did Ric Flair ever sleep? Did Hulk Hogan ever sleep? Hulk Hogan lies a lot in his book, but I believe the part where he says he slept 4 hours a night. Because this guy was running hard and partying and doing everything, and I'm not just saying for partying, but this guy lived a full life.
Devin, the training that the guy was doing 2-a-days.
Oh yeah, they lived in
What
rock
is
star
Kevin Owens doing
lifestyle.
2-a-days? What
He's
is Kevin Owens
eating
doing?
2 triple bacon cheeseburgers a day. That's 2 a days for him.
Alright, well, yeah, Kevin Owens is, of course, Devin's favorite wrestler.
I'm actually surprised that him and Jim Cornette don't get along better with how much they both like Wendy's. They both keep a very similar diet. But
Yeah, they do. They love those triple cheeseburgers. And
I actually think Jim Cornette
Devin,
would beat him up in a real fight, though. I really
I do too, man. I do too. Cornette, man, I've seen him in the rages, man. Talk about passion. Oof. Devin, I've seen him take a baseball bat to his own car. It's finished right to a match. But anyway, Devin, so now you go ahead and you spoke about your training with Jacques Rougeau and moving forward. And now, Devin, how does this go ahead and take place where predominantly, I mean, you talk about Puerto Rico, we'll get to that, but predominantly now, Devin, you're out like me. You're thrown out into the wolves, and now you're an independent wrestler. Okay, what was it like coming up on the indies and getting bookings and going ahead and you know, the more experience you get out there, and what was your early on career like as an independent performer? Or performer, pro wrestler.
As I said, Stampede Wrestling had 6 events a month, and we were training with them, so that was the basis of what I was being booked on. I did have matches in other Canadian companies, and I attended seminars in the U.S. I remember attending an Ohio Valley seminar, a Cauliflower Alley seminar, but really, I wrestled mostly for Stampede, and then I was sending tapes around. I started getting WWE tryouts in 2004. And then in 2005, I had sent a tape to IWA Puerto Rico when I got a call back from them saying they wanted me to start full-time. So that's pretty much ended up being a wrestler full-time for 4 years.
Let's go to Puerto Rico. You go ahead and you're in Puerto Rico, some brutal bloody battles. You wind up winning the IWA Intercontinental title.
Actually, I was more of a character wrestler. I was more of a character wrestler in IWA anyways. It is known for a bloody territory, but I was never a bleeder really in Puerto Rico, actually. I was Hannibal.
You weren't?
That's where they gave me the moniker Hannibal, but they gave me that moniker because they thought I had similar facial expressions to Anthony Hopkins, and they didn't. You were asking me earlier about my name. That was one of the ribs that Stampede Wrestling played on me. They wanted... That was Bruce, or at least I think it was a rib. They gave me the name Kid Nichols. Well, my last name is Nicholson, and I've never looked like a kid. I've always been big, So it was just like they would often do that in Stampede, just to be. They thought it was funny. Let's give this guy a stupid name, just for our own amusement. So yeah, so they gave me that
Let's
name.
give this guy a stupid name.
Yes, it didn't make any sense for a bodybuilder-looking guy to be called Kid
No.
Nichols, which wasn't even my last name. I could understand if it was
Nope.
my real last name, and then that was another way of the bullying. Everyone would refer to me as Nichols. Not really. I was friends with most of the wrestlers there. I'm just saying the normal things that veterans would pick on you for and stuff. But
Yeah. Devin, let's be honest. The way so a lot of the times this business works is the people in the office, the people in the positions of power, they got to find something that amuses them. So they go ahead. How many these characters that we've seen that wind up being ribs that get played on the boys, and they go ahead and they run with it. And I never understand that. You have a business. You're trying to make money. Let's play games and tell jokes. But, Kid Nichols, you had all these, you were going ahead and you were pounding the pavement and you had to go down and move to Puerto Rico. What was that like?
That's when I sent the tape and they asked me my name. They were like, "We hate that name." And that's when they said I was actually taking Abyss's place, I guess, so they wanted a character similar to Abyss. Originally, they were even thinking of covering up my face, but then they said, we like your facial expressions too much to cover it up.
Yeah.
So they ended up just going with me as regular Hannibal, and I had a very successful run in IWA. Really enjoyed my time there. They took very good care of me, and looking back on it, I really enjoyed it there. But eventually, I was offered more money to jump to WWC, and my
you defected. You went to Carlos.
Yeah, because it was at the time IWA. I had been feuding with Ricky Banderas in a team called Thunder and Lightning with my partner, Mr. Big.
Yeah, Thunder and Lightning. Dean and I were supposed to work them. They're also, they work for the city. They're also cops, too.
Yeah.
They're very well connected down there. You know that, of course.
Yes, but I actually liked wrestling. I have no complaints whatsoever about IWA. But at the time, I didn't want to cut my hair. They wanted me to cut my hair. I was still getting WWE tryouts. I thought I had a better look with long hair. And at the same time, I was training at the gym with Eddie Colon, who was Carlos's other son other than Carlito, and Orlando, who ended up, I forget what his WWE name was, but he was another Colon trainer. Yes. But they were friends with me because we would talk in the gym, and I was offered $100 more a week to go there, and that's why I went to WWC. And,
and Devin, they go ahead, they put all you guys in a house, it's very hot, they go ahead and they have a van that buses you guys back and forth.
No, not really. I was actually treated, in IWA, I had an apartment, I was treated very well in IWA, and Luke Williams, who was one of the bookers, Flash Flanagan, who was Slash Venom there. He was my roommate for a while. But we had a great, we were treated really well. We had a nice apartment complex with a pool. Pay was always on time. There was air conditioning. I loved it there. We were treated like stars. We were famous on the island there, so I had no complaints.
Yeah.
WWC.
You got to hang out on the beach a lot.
I had a pool, so I stayed more at the pool, and I also had a girlfriend who eventually became my fiance there, and so I was things were going well for me at that time. But yeah, when I switched to WWC, she wasn't allowed to live with me because we weren't married yet, but we bought a place, and I lived in the place. and she would drive me to the shows and drive other wrestlers, a guy named Brent that was there, and whoever the star was. So say,
Is that Brent Albright?
no, a guy named Brent Dale. He was in WWC for like 8 years. He lives in Florida. He had a bunch of WWE tryouts too. But yeah, we would drive ourselves. So I do hear about that with WWC. They definitely didn't have the wrestlers staying in the nicest conditions, and they wouldn't even.
No, that's where I'm getting that from.
Yeah.
Chet the Jet Jablonski. Oof, we talked about Bison Smith, and man, the stories I heard with those two sharing rooms and the exploits they were up to. Oh
Bison
my goodness!
Died up there from an overdose of somas.
Yes.
He liked it because there you didn't need a prescription at pharmacies. You could just tell them what you wanted. But but no, yeah, with WWC, they ended up being more and more unreliable on their pay as time went by. I did get along really well with the locker room always in WWC, and there was better camaraderie in WWC, but the pay was not there, and eventually there was just too much money owed, and I couldn't stay there any longer.
Yeah, Devon, I want to get to something that we touched light on previously in our first attempt at this. Now, Devon, you were not familiar with the Bruiser Brody situation. You were not familiar with any of the things that took place. You said, the internet, YouTube things had not become out as much in the mainstream or been.
I mean, I didn't even notice. I didn't know YouTube till around 2008 myself. That's when I discovered it. You didn't have the internet on your phone in 2005, 2006, 2007, unless you were rich. You had to go to an internet cafe, and I never went to internet cafes because I had no. There was
a bunch of perverts said.
No, but like we rarely went to them, especially in Puerto Rico, because there just was no need for it. Like I had everything I needed. If I needed to call someone, I called them on my cell phone. But yeah, no, so we had heard about the Bruiser Brody thing. We all knew. I remember when I was called by Luke Williams to get the Puerto Rico job, he had mentioned to me that Invader was one of the bookers and he was the guy that killed Bruiser Brody. Do you have any problem with that? And that was the first I'd heard of that situation. And at that time, I really didn't care. I was 24, I believe. So I didn't even think twice. Oh, big deal. There's a murderer on the booking team. I don't care. But I didn't know.
No, Devon, what do you think? Yeah, say that again. You what?
No, just like because Brody. First of all, I was training in the Stampede territory. I was a WWE/NWA fan growing up. So, and I started watching wrestling in the late 80s, pretty much after Brody had died. So, like, I had no exposure to him.
88, yeah. Yeah. But Devon, what do you think about that when now you look back, you've interviewed Barbara Goodish, you've interviewed people that have, been there like Tony, and now that you go ahead and you have the light shined in your eyes and you go ahead and understand what took place, put yourself in that situation. Do you think you would, Shark Boy, that little pecker, him and I, not the best relationship, but I'll never forget, he had been offered to go to Puerto Rico. I'll never forget the words feverishly came out of his mouth. No way, man, they took Brody from us, those bastards. So, what do you think about this? Because when you're talking about your Puerto Rico career, I mean, Devon, you're a historian.
And I was a two-time WWC Tag Team Champion and former IWA Intercontinental Champion there, yeah. Just before.
Yes. So now all these things you did in Puerto Rico, we're going to get to you and Abdullah, and we're going to wind this down. This is part one. We're getting into that. I wanted to get into your WWE charts. But Devon, what did you now looking back and seeing? What would you go ahead and have done differently had you had the knowledge put in front of you about what took place? And then you got the freaking murderer walking around scot-free. He goes ahead, blood on his hands, and they even turned the damn thing into an angle, Devin, and they tried to get sympathy for him on television. What do you think about the whole situation now, looking back, talking about the Goodish and everybody?
I'm really disgusted about the whole situation. That's why I always put out videos about it, because I really hope that someone reopens that case, because it's a travesty. But I never got along with Invader. I didn't like him. We never were, like, I was Savio and Luke's friend, and Victor Quiones owned the league, and I always got along with him, but Invader always rubbed me the wrong way just because I didn't like him. I found him bossy, and I just didn't respect him. And the other thing, that was my only memories of Invader in IWA. The one thing that really I found stupid in IWA, there's a guy named Pablo Marquez that...
Devin, I've worked with him.
Yeah. He put me over the first night I wrestled there. And the last TV taping I was at in IWA, when they knew I was leaving, they showed up, and they weren't going to give me a match for whatever reason. I don't know why they didn't want me to lose before I left, but they didn't. And Pablo was there doing nothing, and I had driven out to this town with my girlfriend at the time, which was like a 3-hour drive. They paid me anyways, but I said, well, why don't I put Pablo over, because I liked him. And
great guy.
And he wasn't doing anything either. And Invader said, nah, we don't need you to do that right in front of Pablo. And then I'm like, okay, can I go then? He's like, what? You got better things to do than stick around here? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, go. So that was the last words I ever had with Invader. I wasn't saying it in a mean way either. It's like, if I'm not wrestling, I'm not working for this company anymore. I'm not just going to sit around here. I offered to put over this guy.
What a dickhead. What, bro? You got bad things to do? Like, come on, man. Like, seriously. You're there to wrestle. You're not there to twiddle your thumbs and go ahead and hang out in the back.
No.
Like, that just makes no sense.
And
that just goes...
Yeah, it makes no sense at all. But the other thing about that time that I'll tell you about that always bothered me, in WWC we wrestled in that building where Brody was murdered. And I always felt sick because I was a heel. I was always, they would always mention the dressing room. And like everyone would always point it out. It was always an eerie thing. Someone would always point it out.
I heard you got like an eerie feeling, just like chill bumps even being in that area.
I could never even look in that shower because I would, like, you know, everyone wants to look in that shower because it's like, oh, that's where he was killed.
Yeah.
They just want to look and see. I could never even stick my head in there because it bothered me. And that was without even knowing.
Can I explain to the people what you're saying? Maybe the listeners at home that aren't smart to the situation. Devin's saying, look in the shower. So many people are saying, well, what the hell is he talking about the shower for? Well, for fans. What Devin's talking about is, and even today this is still done, where, you know, back in the day, so like I said today, to conduct business, the two guys might go into the dressing room and go into the shower, go over, you know, business, payoffs, things that have to do with matches. Devin, am I speaking correct? Like, that's basically what happens.
Problem of some sort, anything, if you're,
yes.
You'll go in the shower because you don't want to say it in front of everybody.
Exactly. You want to take your personal business, make it private. So what you go ahead and you do is the two gentlemen will get together and do that. And the crazy thing about this, Devin, as I lower my voice, is that Devin, they had rode together to the same building. There was no heat, Dutch said. There was no animosity. And I'm almost even going to get choked up in saying this. you are very good friends with Tony Atlas. And Devin, I got to go ahead and give you a pat on the back. I know I kiss your buttocks over and over with all the great work you do, but you really do. Because you have these interviews with these guys, and then you go ahead and have them back, and you get even more out of them. Well, your Tony Atlas interview, man, how do you not go ahead and want to shed a tear where he's telling you that Bruiser Brody goes ahead and was so enamored with Tony's artwork, and he'd asked if basically he took a picture of his beautiful son out of his wallet. He went ahead and was showing it to Tony and said, "Hey, can you draw my son for me?" And then all of a sudden, Invader goes ahead and calls Brody. "Hey, Brody, come to the shower. I got to talk to you." So Brody, with the picture in hand, goes to the shower area, and Tony goes ahead, thinks nothing of it, okay? He just sees two of the boys going to conduct business. And Devin, I heard that the sounds, I've heard it to be equated to like an animal that's wounded, okay? That the sounds were just so vicious, and that no good low-life piece of shit, sorry son of a bitch, goes ahead with the knife. He takes a knife, and he goes ahead, and he stabs Brody. He even tried to cut Brody's ponytail off, and Devin, Savio most recently shined the light. Devin, he tried to stab him in the face, the rat bastard, okay? And then he goes ahead, and Tony goes ahead, he's hearing this commotion, he jumps up, and he's the one who wound up getting Invader off of Brody, and to try to go ahead and stop the blood loss and stop the damage. And it seems like Tony Atlas was the only one that involved himself as a true friend of Brody.
Yeah, and I think one of the worst parts about it is with all the contacts that Carlos Colon has in Puerto Rico, who is the promoter of WWC, and was in the dressing room. He wasn't in the shower, apparently, till after. But, like, they could have had an ambulance there a lot faster than they did. He lied on the floor 45 minutes, from all reports I've heard, bleeding out. People are just
holding
going
his intestines in.
Yeah. So, I believe there was definitely... Well, you can't say that The Office didn't have something to do with it when they let the guy wrestle on the card that killed Brody wrestle that night, and he kept his job as booker for years to come, and he still wrestles in that company up until recent years. So if someone murdered somebody in a company in Canada, they're not going to say, "Okay, finish off your day of work here, and then we'll let the police get to it." The guy's just going to go to the hospital. But also from all accounts, like, they owed Brody money at the time, as they always owe wrestlers money. So it just leads me to believe there was more involved in it. And a lot of people say, well, Brody was stiffing Invader. Well, they weren't feuding. They weren't even feuding at the time. They weren't even scheduled to wrestle. So how does this have to do with a match? You call him in, there's a knife wrapped around your towel on your arm. How is that self-defense? Anyways.
Yeah, Devin, self-defense is the most piss-poor excuse I've heard. That, like, it's just disgusting. And I want to, like, Devin, maybe on another episode about a lot of these other things, I'd like to get into them with you and talk about a lot of the things in pro wrestling that have just taken place that are just reprehensible. But we'll close the chapter on that one.
But the worst part about that, I'll just say real quick, was when I actually saw... Like, it always disturbed me, but when I actually saw Barbara Goodish for the first time, it took everything I had to control myself, because when I actually saw her, it made the whole situation real to me, because she's such a sweet lady, and it's like, I know I've seen her in pictures with him, I know this is his wife. Like, how the poor pain this woman must have felt. It destroyed me to find out.
And the little boy, Devin, the poor little boy losing his father that Barbara had to raise all alone. Come on, it's terrible.
It's awful, and it's awful that Carlos Colon is in the Hall of Fame. It's just weird. I don't understand how Hulk Hogan's not in there. But Superfly Snuka is, Carlos Colon is, Abdullah the Butcher is. So it's just, how can some people be in and then Chris Benoit's not allowed in? But it doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying he should be in.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't even care. I just don't like. I just don't like that whole situation about what happened.
No, Devin, this is all. Come on, Devin. We're becoming fast new friends and hopefully business partners here. There's a method to my madness, man. What I'm trying to tell you to do is you go ahead. You go to the Hannibal TV. You go ahead and you look up the Tony Atlas. Well, you know what? Take it away, Devin.
There's a whole playlist on Bruiser Brody. If you want to see, if you search on YouTube, Bruiser Brody, the Hannibal TV, there's like 20 videos of various wrestlers that were either witnesses to the incident or close to Brody or aware of the incident.
Barbara, your interview with Barbara?
Yeah, I also interviewed Brody's wife, and I'll probably interview her again later this month when I go back to Iowa to cover the 2018 George Tragos Lou Thez Hall of Fame inductions for them.
When is that?
That's in a couple of weeks in Waterloo, Iowa. I already have Sonny Ono lined up for a shoot interview that week, who, for people that don't know, not only was he a manager in WCW, but he's one of Eric Bischoff's closest friends, and he was the talent liaison between New Japan and WCW. So he's a great behind-the-business shoot interview, and I'm working on finalizing something with Nikita Koloff to get him and possibly Bob.
Devin, oh my God. Nikita Koloff, are you going to get Magnum too? Is he going to be in the vicinity?
I don't know if Magnum's going to be there. He has been in the past, but definitely it depends. If people want to join Patreon, it depends what we have the budget for, because these guys definitely cost money. We'll see, but maybe we'll get some up more. But we'll definitely be getting lots of small interviews that weekend, and I hope to talk to Dan Gable again. That was one of my favorite interviews I ever did. So, I'm looking forward to that weekend. It's a great weekend. I think it's July 23rd weekend or something in Waterloo.
Oh, my God. That's incredible.
We did cover the 2016 Hall of Fame in Waterloo, Iowa. There's videos.
Yes, she did. Like I was saying, that no good turd Rory Fox going ahead and rushing you, trying to go ahead and speak to you, and you guys were talking about that cage match and an atrocity that it was in the main event. I'm sure he'll go ahead.
I don't recall ever saying that. I actually like the company that puts on that event, and they're letting us record the event this year.
Yes.
So I have nothing but good to say, and I'm a big supporter of that Hall of Fame. And speaking of Hall of Fame, I just did the Cauliflower Alley Club too, which.
Devin, you got the whole ceremony with Jim Ross. You had your camera there, and you went ahead and had the speeches. Alexis Smirnoff, and come on.
Greg Valentine,
who's going to go ahead and
Shawn Michaels was there. We got his speech.
Yes.
Look at Harlem Heat, Baron von Raschke, Steve Kern. Lots of interviews. Sam Houston did a short interview. Rob Van Dam did an interview with us. So many. That was.
I mean, who's going to bring you this interview in this much detail? I mean, I know everything about this stuff, and I follow it all. I think this is going to go ahead. Devin Nicholson, Hannibal, you're a class act, becoming a good friend of mine, and I think, Devin, that we're going to have to go ahead and you've been so wonderful with your time, pre-interview, you go ahead and giving me all this information and stuff to research from. I'm trying to go ahead and go into every little nook and cranny of your career and life, because what a story this is to tell. Devin, we got so much more to tell, and to go ahead and give a sneak peek, I wanted to get to it tonight. We're going to have to end it there. Next up, Devin mentioned his tryouts with WWE. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to the horrible, disgusting, hepatitis-infected pig of the earth Abdullah the Butcher going ahead and working with Devon and infecting him with hepatitis, and then all of a sudden the court case, and to this day that no good filthy turd doesn't even have the to pay what he owes. It's Devon, how many millions of dollars does that low down bastard owe you at this moment, to where he closed his rib shop, he went ahead, put everything into his wife's name? How much does the course we'll get to it, but I'm just curious, the case judgment against Larry Shreve, Abdullah's real name, what is that outstanding debt at?
I don't even remember, but it was several million. He definitely did have a lot of assets in the past, which unfortunately what happened. Well, you're not going to get into this week, but unfortunately what happened was basically we won the case against him in Canada for negligence, assault, and battery for cutting me with a hepatitis C infected razor blade in a match without my consent. So we won that case. He was proven guilty in Canada, but unfortunately there was a couple of years delay to get the judgment certified in the U.S., where he lives in Fulton County, Georgia.
Georgia.
So within that time he transferred all the assets we know of at this point that he had. So unfortunately that window kind of screwed us in that he doesn't live in Canada. But the main thing was my treatment was very expensive, and it's a fact.
Yeah, the medications?
And I also lost, the medications were tens of thousands of dollars. I had to take time off work. And then not only the medical damages, because I had to go through 2 different chemotherapy treatment regimes to get cured of hepatitis C. But the other damages
we're gonna get into all of this. I'm not trying to cut you off.
People that think that money, though, just to say, is ridiculous. The main part of that money was, and this was calculated by an actuary, an expert is, it's a fact, I lost my WWE contract, which I was offered.
Yes.
It was rescinded due to me having hep C.
Devon, we'll pause there, because let me just tell you this man to man is my contract was taken away from me because of injuries I suffered, and they had paid for surgeries, and let's face it, they didn't want to pay for another one. I think I even messaged you yesterday. I was trying to go into detail. They go ahead, Devon. They cover their own tuchus, and they don't like having what they feel is a bad investment or a liability on their own hands. And I wound up losing my contract that I was. They make all these big plans and promises to you, and then at the end of the day, they don't follow through or keep their word. You had a lawsuit against. There's just so much to get to. Fans, I don't know how many different parts of this we're going to do. I'm going to try to go ahead. Hannibal is a very busy man. He promotes, he does the interviews. Devon, we're going to get into also, just a little snippet of each. We're going to get into how you started doing the interviews, which it started because of your documentary. You were being followed and interviewed about your whole ordeal, and then you wound up going ahead and doing the shoot interviews, and we're going to talk about how you got into that and creating the Hannibal TV.
Just one thing I just want to say quick about WWE, just so I don't have any confusion. I don't hold anything against WWE. I had an issue with them that was resolved, and I don't care anymore. I don't follow their product. I don't wish anything negative against them, just to say for the record. The feud that I had with them is over. So,
is that all you want to say about that?
I just don't want to make it seem like I'm an anti-WWE person, because I'm not. I don't watch the product anymore. They can do their thing, I can do my thing, and that's just how it's going to go. They're not interested in me. I'm not. I would sure love to make the money Brock Lesnar's making, but that's not going to happen, so I'm not going to waste my time pushing for that.
Oh yeah, well you know what, Devin? At the end of the day, you and I talked off the air. It just seems that it's just like the ones like us that have the real heart, the real passion, the real stories. Oh yeah, okay, go over there. But then the ones that they go ahead and they use, they manipulate, they talk shit, they show up when they want to. It's just been baffling to the mind how they go ahead and get afforded these opportunities. So we're going to talk about that. Devin, please, we need you to clear things up that you do not own Great North Wrestling. You are one of the promoters. But Devin, I mentioned this previously, you go ahead and you promote by scouting the talent because you want to have the best competition, the best matches. You want to be able to help put the best matches on your roster, and you have other championships that are defended on these shows that people vie for. So basically, you work as also a matchmaker. There is a president, but you try to go ahead and work in have the best competition come into GNW. But there is another gentleman that actually owns the company.
It's an incorporated company, so it's an incorporation. But there's lots of people involved in Great North Wrestling. But I wouldn't say I'm a matchmaker, but I'm.
Well, then you go ahead. You're looking for the. What I'm trying to say, Devin, and I'm not.
Here, I'll tell you what I do. I do edit the videos of most of the matches, and if someone does bad stuff in a match, I won't have them. I'll make sure they don't ever wrestle for us again.
Wait, go ahead. You got to say that, Devin.
I just said I'm not a matchmaker, but I do edit a lot of the matches. And if I see something I don't like, I'll make sure that the situation is dealt with appropriately.
Now, Devin, like a Coco Beware, would a Coco Beware, Jeremy?
Oh yes, I definitely. I was able to make sure Coco Beware would never appear for Great North Wrestling again. That's for sure.
Yeah, Jerry, hey, brother, I'm not going to do anything.
Well, but I explained this to somebody the other day. You can't accept an acting job on a movie and then you take the pay for it. And I'm not going to do your script. I'm just going to do whatever I want. But Coco thought he could do this in wrestling, and we were in a tight spot. Couldn't find a replacement. We were in the middle of nowhere, so we were stuck with him for that night. But I could make sure that we could never use him again.
Yeah. And Jeremy's your friend, and he's one of the
I wouldn't say he's a friend. He's a co-worker, and we've had a lot.
Well, he's a co-worker, but you guys are Devin. Come on. Devin, do you even have any friends? Every time I bring up a friend and you go and tell me, oh, no, I don't think he's a friend of mine.
We've never done anything We've never done anything on business related together. So I wouldn't say he's
you and Jeremy?
Friend. No. Definitely not.
You guys have worked together, though, Devin.
We're wrestlers. Does that mean that we're friends?
Well, I don't know. You've been in the car for some 20-something hours at a time. Well, put it this way. You guys are rivals. How's that?
I wouldn't say we're even rivals. We've had our battles. He's split my head open. He's jumped off of a corner. Did you see this video of him jumping off of a corner post and landing ass first on my head? Where my head went through a table and bashed against the concrete floor.
Wait, which video was this?
Oh, it's tables, ladders, and chairs him and I had back in, I think, 2011.
Is this 2013?
No, this was 2011. But,
okay.
But no, we're definitely not friends in the ring, but legitimately business partner, he's not even a business partner, he's a business associate and an acquaintance. I wouldn't consider him a friend. I just want to be clear on that.
Oh, boy. Well, Devin, that's what I'm trying to say is, I try to think I eventually will be a business partner and hopefully friend to you, but who knows? You could turn around, kick me in the balls, and go ahead and leave me for dead at the end of the day. I go ahead and I see that Hannibal, we're going to talk about this, that Hannibal gets in a blind Uh-oh, they're coming for me. No, the Hannibal goes ahead and gets in a blind rage, and he sees red, and he goes ahead and he pounces and attacks, and he just fights. We're going to talk about the Lanny Poffo situation. We're going to talk about the big Bubba Glover, where Devon got his revenge, where Jeremy was involved on these promoters that tried to go ahead and take advantage of the GNW crew. After they, Devon, what was that, 19 hours you were driving for that show?
That was something like 19 hours in the woods. Like 15 of that was in the pure woods. With deer and moose on the road, and 3,000 fans waiting for a show, and then the ring doesn't show up. You have wrestlers flying in from the U.S. on flights that cost a fortune, and someone backed out of their deal.
Yeah, that was insane. You guys were actually going to work the show on gym mats, Lanny suggested. And, oh, my God.
Well, we weren't canceling because we had a $30,000 gate at that point, and I was going to lose everything if we didn't do something.
Yeah. Oh, that was the one Sid came. Guys, there's just so much to cover. I keep going ahead. What I'm trying to do is this wrestling business, this is how I was taught to do it. You always want to leave the crowd wanting more. So I'm giving you a little taste. I'm throwing you a little chum, getting the water nice and bloody. We're going to have you come back. As of this time, I don't know when. You will be coming back for part 2. We're going to do several parts to this. Devon has been so generous with his time. But now, I go ahead. I gave you enough for now. You should be full till the next time. Now, just to go ahead and review, we're going to go ahead and let Devon promote everything upcoming, everything he wants you to go ahead and participate and view. But, like I said, upcoming, Devon, his endeavor as a promoter, an interviewer, an MMA fighter, or a kickboxer, we should say, but his MMA training, his professional wrestling career, his WWE tryout, so much. Just these wonderful stories, videos you can watch all at the Hannibal TV. It's where I get my entertainment. Devon, take it away. The floor is yours. Please promote everything you'd like to promote, your upcoming shows, your upcoming releases on GNW, and whatever there is you'd like these fine people that are viewing the show to go, or listening to the show, to go ahead and make sure they check out.
Well, if they've been listening this long, they're probably super fans of the channel and they already know all of this. But subscribe on YouTube to the Hannibal TV if you're not listening to this. If you are listening to this on the Hannibal TV, the audio version, just click the subscribe, otherwise search it. Otherwise, go to thehannibaltv.com, which has all of our links. And we have a show coming up Sunday, August 26th. Super Fight Sunday. I'm going to be in a Brawl for All shoot kickboxing match against Maximum Testosterone, who his real name is Maxim Lemiere. He is a strongman competitor, legitimately can pull airplanes, fire trucks. So he also has a black belt in karate. That's legitimate. So he's accepted my challenge to fight me in a shoot, 3-round kickboxing fight exhibition match at this August 26th show, because I'm not going to wrestle for a while. I'm just telling everyone listening to this right now, I'm not going to wrestle for a while. I'm disenchanted with wrestling, and while I feel I'm in my physical prime, I'm going to give combat sports a try. I'm going to hopefully be having a pro MMA fight later this year, early next year. And for now, I'm going to be training in kickboxing, which is my weak point, as well as continuing to refresh my memory on my amateur wrestling and grappling skills. But I'm really focusing on trying to become a better stand-up fighter. Had one amateur match.
Ground and pound attack as well?
Well, my grounding, I've literally been in more street fights than I can remember, or that I can count. Yeah. And my technique has always been double leg ground and pound. So this is why I'm doing kickboxing, where there is no ground fighting, and I'm trying to perfect ground fighting. But anyways, the whole reason I'm bringing that up is because that's why I'm having a kickboxing match on this event. It is a wrestling show, as you mentioned. Great North Wrestling is a company. It's not my company, but we have fans. There's a lot of fans all over the world of Great North Wrestling, as one of the reasons why the Hannibal TV is so popular. So Great North Wrestling is going to continue. There's 3 title matches on this event. There's a 20-man battle royal to crown a new Canadian champion since Quebecer Pierre.
New title belt.
Yeah, there's going to be a brand new title belt. The old title belt, we are auctioning it off via private auction. Up until July 20th, people can bid at greatnorthwrestling@gmail.com. Just email your bid, and maybe they'll take it. You never know. And basically, Wes Briscoe's taking on Nathan Banner, who just had a match against Tony Atlas that can be seen on the Hannibal TV. That's for the World TV title. Lady Yasmin is taking on Jordan Grace for the Women's Championship of Canada. There's going to be 7 matches on the card. It's going to be recorded for the Hannibal TV. So I would suggest people come out if they live in the Ottawa, Montreal, Hawkesbury area, because it's a short drive to get to Hawkesbury. From Ottawa, Montreal, tickets are on sale now, starting at just $10 in advance through ticketweb.ca. More information, thehannibaltv.com. My Twitter is at Devon Hannibal, DEVON HANNIBAL. Great North Wrestling's Twitter is at GN Wrestling. Great North Wrestling also has a Facebook page, Great North Wrestling. So that's everything that I can think of, but mainly subscribe to the Hannibal TV for all the latest updates, and we're going to have lots of great footage coming your way. We just posted the Al Snow full shoot interview. There's plenty more coming, not just with wrestlers, but MMA fighters. We just interviewed Forrest Griffin, Roy Nelson, Stephan Bonner. I've interviewed Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn in the past. I'm really interested in MMA now, so I'm going to be heading in that direction, as well as continuing with the wrestling legends. So thanks for letting
Devon,
me
the arm wrestler? Who's the arm wrestler?
He has actually done great. If you look at it, it's funny. I had a fan of the Hannibal TV from Florida, who was actually Billy Graham's webmaster for his Facebook page. And he said, "Do you know the world champion arm wrestler lives in the city you're in?" And nobody that I'm aware of cares about arm wrestling in the city. So I said, no. And he's like, "You should go interview this guy. He's great." So I did some research on him. I'm like, okay, I guess he's worth interviewing. He is a world champion. He has impressive accomplishments. And he is one of my highest hit interviews I've ever done. I guess the arm wrestling community really follows him. So Devin Larratt, he actually beat the Mountain from Game of Thrones in an arm wrestling match. And he's a great arm wrestler. We locked up, and as you can see by the picture in the full shoot, I kind of surprised him. So that's all I'll say about our arm wrestling match.
Devon, did he defeat you? There was a Billy Graham video where people can see where you come on, Devon. You took advantage of the man a little, and you made a damn spectacle of yourself too. You're in a public establishment. The
best part about that is they booed me. They booed me. A public establishment booed me. But they also called the police on me.
Yes, I think you frightened the people, Devon.
Yeah, well, the problem is, you want to know what the problem with that whole situation was?
Yes,
that kind of got out of control, but the thing was, the camera guy, like Billy and I were there for dinner. It just turned into the little uproar because he was being a sore loser about losing to me in arm wrestling. But the thing was, I had to leave with them, and once I stormed out, I realized, oh, great, the camera guy's the one that drove me here. But then, people were saying the police were called, and the cops did end up coming, so I'm like, I can't just hang around here. And there was many people in the restaurant legitimately angry at me. So I had to walk to a nearby McDonald's that's about a mile away, far enough that I didn't think the police would search. And then they had to pick me up like 10 or 15 minutes later at the McDonald's. And Billy and I made up since then. He's agreed that I'm the new arm wrestling champion of the world, the greatest arm wrestler of all the pro wrestlers. So we settled
Devin, we haven't walked up yet. But we'll go left-handed. Oh, Devin,
well, you haven't beaten Billy Graham, have you?
No, I don't have a beef. I love the man. He's
no,
my
you
idol.
haven't beaten him in an arm wrestling match.
I haven't beaten him. Oh.
I
don't know.
I hold that
Devin,
distinction.
come on. I would let him win. How do you not let the man win?
This was done that was done quite a few years ago. He was still
yes.
in pretty good shape in those days compared to what he is now.
Yeah,
Speaking of which, I'll say this quickly. This has gone way over time, but for the 5 people left listening to this, Billy Graham has a GoFundMe. He needs a hip operation.
Yeah,
and he can't afford it. He really needs this hip operation. He needs to pay off his last hospital bill before they'll do anything further. He's in extreme amount of pain. For some reason, WWE will spend hundreds of thousands reportedly on Scott Hall and Sonny's rehab, but they won't fix this legitimate legend. He's the one that coined the term superstar for a wrestler. Now all wrestlers are called superstar, but they can't help him out. He does not live lavishly, okay? He lives with his wife in a one-bedroom hotel room. It's not a one-bedroom, a one-room hotel room. He's in extreme pain. Please help the guy out. If anyone has even $1, I don't know what the minimum bid is, but anything will help this man. He's a great man. He's really helped me out in my life. He's the one responsible for me getting on the medication that I took to become cured.
That's exactly what I was
We'll get into that another time, but donate to his GoFundMe.
No, I was just going to say, yes, I was going to say, Billy Graham's responsible for Devin being able to get the proper help he desperately needed because Billy Graham went through that stuff. Devin, look, I'm sorry, man. I've been wanting to do this for a while. Maybe I went a little too over there, but come on, man. You've had a fascinating life, and I pretty much said it. I believe the promo is airing on Hannibal TV, or I have another one in the Sun like you requested. People can hear this interview on Hannibal TV. You can hear it on Action VR Network. We're going to go ahead and keep bringing you. Devin, don't you agree you've had a very fascinating life and you've accomplished a lot in your 35 years?
I have not even scratched the surface of my accomplishments, and as I said, I always thought I was just going to be a wrestler. Now I don't even think I'm going to be a wrestler anymore. I'm definitely most known as being a reporter at this point in time, and who knows what the future holds. I'm doing acting stuff. I just attended an interview for the It movie, but it's a minor role, yes, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that. But I'm doing lots of stuff, but definitely my main focus right now is fight training. And everyone, there might be a part 2 of this in the future. We've just started this, but I'm going to have a busy few months. I got a fight to prepare for. The promo that Brian's talking about, I'm going to put it before this interview plays the audio version. So I forgot. I didn't have time to post it, to be honest, because I've been very busy. But I'll post, just so people know who the person interviewing me is, I'll post that as the introduction to this audio.
Oh, wonderful, Devin. Thank you. I actually got to send you the new one in the Sun. It was a very good idea. Devin, we're going to go, but that's another thing. You have this expertise in filming and recording and lighting, and you even said to me, gave me some tips, and I got to tell you, man, I appreciate it. Devin, you've taken so much of your time. Again, I keep saying it. Have you plugged everything you want to plug, everything you want everyone to know about?
Everything. TheHannibalTV.com, it's all on there.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much again. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this. And this is for the diehard Great North Wrestling fans that are out there, and there needs to be more of you. And you know what? I'm going to do whatever I can to make Great North Wrestling just turn into Great Pro Wrestling. For the Action VR Network, For my new buddy, the Hannibal TV, the death dealer, Devon Nicholson, I am Brian Danovich. This has been Wrestling with Passion's Death Dealer, Dealing in Life, Career Retrospective. I will see you all in the past, where it's always a blast. Good night, my paisans. Oh!